Hi, my name is Reccy and I am 28 years old, and welcome to Unique Purpose.
How do you balance your career and
How I balance my career and passion. Right now, I'm very blessed. I'm able to work Mondays to Thursdays, and then I get a 3-day weekend. So I've designated Fridays to doing work for my art clients, or just any projects I want to work on for myself in terms of my art and paintings. Previously, when I was working Mondays to Fridays, I would try and once or twice a week work on a piece of art. And then if I did have the energy or inspiration over the weekends, then I would also do some paintings and some art there as well. I also try and do at least once a month an art event, and then that helps me, even if I'm not painting, but to be in that environment, that creative environment, so that it's not just all the time law. I'm able to actually do a bit of both.
so what do you mean about an art event? What does that involve?
So the last ones that I've done have been like sip and paint events. So I've worked as a helper for these, where I get to come and help facilitate paint parties for people who buy tickets. So I've worked with two different companies that are based in London, and I help them with just kind of setting up, tear down, and then they've given me the opportunity to sell my art there as well. So that's been nice, where it's exposure and getting to get some business, but also just kind of brand awareness. People know who I am. But at the same time, it's just a fun environment where, it's kind of like painting, but it's party, it's good vibes, enjoyment. So yeah, it's a nice balance of both.
So you're really taking advantage of the fact that you're working 4 days a week now?
Yes, the Monday to Thursday grind has been great. I'd like to say I've been disciplined in like really getting work for my art done on Friday, but there have been some Fridays where I've been a bit lazy and it's just been kind of catching up on sleep. But it's just nice knowing that I have one weekday where I can actually sit down and full time just focus on art, focus on my craft.
How long have you been doing art for?
For as long as I can remember. My dad actually, when he was younger, wanted to be an artist, but African parents sometimes they don't see the point in it. So my grandfather discouraged him. But when I was a kid, I really liked to draw, and so my dad had this book where he would draw a picture, and then I would try and copy it. So that's kind of where my passion for art started. And then I just started taking classes in elementary school all the way through high school, and then also continued in university. But I've always just kind of done it as a hobby and for fun. And it's kind of just an outlet for me in terms of just like working through emotions and stuff. So I'd say I've done art my whole life. Yeah.
Is this something that you like to do full time, or are you trying to do lawyer?
So at the moment, my full-time commitment is law. So I'm currently working at a law firm. But my plan is, God willing, to retire at 45, to be done with law at 45, and then spend the rest of my life. I want to open a gallery, and I actually want to become an international art collector, and travel and collect art. So I already do that now. When I do go on trips, I do try and collect a piece of art from whatever country I've been to. But I want to be able to do that full time and actually open a gallery, not just to feature my own art, but to feature other artists as well, particularly Black artists, because I feel like that's an area that, although it's getting a lot of growth, I think we really need to focus on our own talent as well.
What have you done so far?
So right now, especially this last year, I've been doing a representation matters kind of theme to my art. So I have just an Instagram page and a website that I've set up just featuring the Black art that I've done. And the last year I did a celebrity portrait series, and then I did two kind of independent pieces. So yeah, so far it's just been a lot of just creating art that shows representation of Black heroes, Black artists, and just people that inspire us on a daily basis. So that's been my project this last year.
Has your career in law been positive?
I'd say overall, yes. I've gotten some amazing opportunities to do things because of law. So I've done some legal work experience in St. Lucia back in 2019. So that was nice because I learned a lot of amazing things, but also got to, travel and enjoy the beach. And then I also got to do a work experience this year with a law firm in Greece for a month. So my experience with law has been great in the sense that it's allowed me opportunities to mix my passion with traveling and learning about different jurisdictions for law, while also kind of building a CV and my skill set. But it hasn't always been positive. I just recently left a role where I was working in-house role with a company. And it was just, I learned so much about that specific area of law, but it was really, really demanding. And it got to a point where I had to leave because of mental health reasons. I was just being expected to do too much. I was being expected to work crazy hours with limited resources, and I just had to step away from it. So I believe that one door closes to open up to bigger and better ones. And once I left that job, I took some time off and was approached with a new opportunity. And that's the role that I'm doing right now. So I'm actually doing intellectual property law, which was an area of law I never really saw myself practicing. But I kind of took a chance and accepted the role. And I have to say, it's been one of the best experiences I've had in terms of my legal work experience. So it's great because I have, the Monday to Thursday schedule. I have bosses and coworkers who are really supportive and do prioritize my mental health, which is great. And I'm also able to do an area of law that actually ties into my passion for art. So with intellectual property, we do work mostly with, tech companies and engineers and stuff, but we do have some art clients. So it's been really nice to have this bridge between my passion for law and my passion for art as well. So in that sense, I'd say that overall my experience with law has been positive, but I think it was also, there was a very kind of not so great period where doing law and the job that I had did affect my mental health and well-being.
What did you learn from the previous role and the previous experience of working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, the workload, no help, no support? Like, how was it?
It really taught me a lot of lessons. I'd say the biggest one being that there's no glory in suffering. And I think that a lot of people who are like me, where we are, we've always been hustlers, we've always worked hard. I come from a family of very strong women who we go and go and go. And I've always felt my whole life that I am not able to just stop and to prioritize my mental health, my well-being. And this job and the deterioration that it had on me emotionally and physically, it got to the point where my mental health was so bad that like my hair started falling out, which is just bizarre to me. It made me realize that like I have to make sure that mental health and well-being is a priority for me, and that no job, no matter how great the pay, no matter how great the opportunity, is worth losing sight of yourself and your well-being. So it was one of those things where I did give it my best shot. I gave my employer, coworkers an opportunity to actually understand my boundaries. I set those boundaries and I said, listen, this is what I need to be respected. And unfortunately, despite numerous conversations, my boundaries were not respected, and I did not receive the support or resources I needed to be able to do my job well. So it was the most bizarre thing I've ever done, quitting a job, not having something else lined up. I think I've worked officially since I was like 16, but I've been babysitting and legally, legally since I was 16. But obviously I've been like babysitting and helping my mom with her business since I was like 9. So I've just never known not working. And so I took about a month and a half off and just rested. And it was so scary to be like to have to do that, but it was what I needed. And like I said, the right opportunity presented itself in that period for me to get into this better role. So I think my biggest takeaway from my last role is that never, ever again am I going to let a job, no matter how great the opportunity, no matter how much money it is, make me lose myself and jeopardize my mental health and well-being.
Do you know what? People in law who get into law, it's like it's expected for them to work like crazy hours and no social life, like put themselves second or even last.
Yeah. And I think that was kind of what happened, was that I think a lot of firms and even just companies, if you're doing in-house roles, they pay you a lot of lip service and say, your mental health is really like important to us, because I think that's what they're supposed to say. But one thing I would encourage anyone who's watching this is that you need to distinguish between lip service and actual meaningful like attempts to foster an environment that does enable you to prioritize your mental health. With my previous role, there was a lot of things that were said to me as, we support you, and we want you to be okay, and but at the end of the day, on the day-to-day basis, that's not what actually happened. Whereas with this role, my employers very much put their money where their mouth is, and so Like, for example, like we have to take an hour lunch. Like, we're not allowed to sit in front of our desk and eat. Like, we have to go away from our computers, away from our work, and sit down and actually just take a break. My boss also doesn't let us work overtime unless it's like, a super big project that we have to get done and crunched. So once it hits 5 o'clock, he's like, everyone pack up and go home, because he's like, I don't want burnout. I don't want people to be, not having a social life. We're part of like a tech community where they have a lot of social events. And we get invited to all these things, but he says there's no pressure for you to attend. If you have things that you'd like to do in your personal time or just to rest, you don't feel like you don't have to come. So whereas I feel like a lot of firm culture is that once you finish the actual work, you have to be part of this community, which there's nothing wrong in that. But I think that sometimes it's nice to have work friends and then your own friends. So I definitely think there's some firms and some businesses that are taking a step away from the traditional, work culture of having to just work as your life 24/7. And the great thing about working for a smaller firm is that the founding partners used to be part of big firms, and they've kind of taken everything they hated about that and just formed a new model that focuses on mental health and well-being. So yeah, it's been good. It's been good to have a shift of culture.
What have you been doing since the time from quitting your job and this new role, that little period of time? How do you self-care?
So first thing I did is I went home to see my parents. I see my parents like once every 2 to 3 years. So it's something my brother and I have gotten used to. Any kid who's a TCK or anyone who has parents who are missionaries, this is our life. You see your parents every few years, but it does have an emotional toll on you, because as great as it is to, I formed my own kind of families and places I've lived. Blood is blood, and your parents are your parents. So I literally remember the day that I quit my job. I called my dad and I said, I'm coming home. You need to book a flight for me. So he said, all right. So I went home for 2 weeks, and it was really nice because all of these ideas that I had about my role in my family were kind of just put to bed, because I've always been someone I've always viewed myself as a pillar, as a provider, as a breadwinner, and that I have to be strong and I can't be vulnerable around my family. I've always taken care of myself and them, and it just kind of felt like I was letting them down. So I actually went home. I didn't tell any of my extended family. I told one friend I was coming home. That was it. And I wasn't sure what the reaction was going to be. And it was mind-blowing because they were so supportive. It was all about just showing me love. They were like, you need to rest. It was about prioritizing my well-being. And they all were so supportive of the fact that I quit my job. So after coming back from Kenya, I went to London for another couple of weeks and visited a friend and her family, and then just kind of just chilled. I was supposed to be doing job applications and making my next move, but luckily I have been working for this agency kind of officially but unofficially since last year, and they were super supportive and helped me get a new role without having to do any applications. So it was just a month and a half of rest, to be honest with you. Caught up on sleep, caught up on films, ate lots of good food, traveled, went to the beach. It was really nice. So it was just enjoyment and rest.
Were you surprised when you received the support from your family? Because I know, coming from I guess, African family, they don't really believe in mental health issues. You know what I'm saying? So how was that? Were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised about the support from my parents. I'm very blessed to have like really great parents. My dad is a counselor, so mental health is something that he's always focused on, even when we were kids. He's always stressed the importance of emotional well-being. He came from a very kind of tough family life, and so he always said to my mom and even to us growing up that he wanted us to know that our emotional well-being, our physical well-being, and our financial well-being are a priority for them, and that we should feel free as as their kids to be able to come to my parents and talk about things and let them know when we're not okay. So that's why, like, when I decided to quit my job, the first person I called was my dad. And I just said, I'm done and I'm coming home. And he didn't ask any questions. He didn't try and talk me out of it. He knew that if I was making such a drastic decision, it was for a good reason. And he was already aware kind of how unhappy I was with this job. And he'd always said that, listen, if you get to a point where you can't do it anymore, he said, we will support you in any way we can to help you figure out a next move. So I wasn't surprised by the support from my parents, but I was really surprised about the support from my extended family. Just like I said, because I've always had this relationship with them where it's like, okay, like, you know, if they are in a tough situation, I help them out and stuff. But it was just they welcomed me with, you know, open arms and said like, no, that makes sense. Like, take time to rest. And even when I got back, a lot of them checked in on me and said, you know, how are things? Like, have you managed to get a new job? Like, how are you doing? And it was just really, really nice to get that extra support from them. And yeah, it was just a lot of people stepped in, friends, family. Even my friends that I stayed with in London, they were just like, if you want to stay for a month, 2 months, you want to come live with us, like, there's no questions. We'll come to Birmingham, help you move your stuff. Like, we got you. So it was really nice to see that all my fears of not being able to have people to rely on were just false, and that the people who genuinely care about me really came through for me.
Were you scared when you left your job, like the next step and all that? Because I hate leaving a job and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do the next move. I hate that.
I was terrified because I have been financially independent since I was 18. My parents are great. They've been very emotionally supportive, but financially, they're missionaries, so they don't make money. So I've had to pay my own bills, and if I've needed to spend money on anything, it's always been me. So it was the scariest thing I had to do, but it was just, I reached a point mentally where it was like, I literally did not want to go into work. I was like, I would literally rather die than have to go into my job. And I was like, that's not okay. That's a very scary feeling, to feel like it's either death or I continue on this path. And I said, absolutely not. So it was just vibes. Like, I just said, you know what? God's just gonna have to get me through this.
You had savings?
No. I'm a North American student. We don't have savings because it's student loans, student loans, student loans. So I literally was just like, I didn't know what my next move was. I knew art could kind of help me get through a little bit of it, but nah, it was just vibes. So I really just, it was really a move of faith. And like I said, I was very fortunate that I had my parents were able to support me for that month and a half. So yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to do that again, but but it was what was needed at the time, just so that I could get myself right mentally. So yeah.
What does self-care mean to you, and how do you plan on continuing?
Okay, so self care, I think it's not a just you do it one time and then you're like, I bet, see you next year. It's a daily decision. It's a routine. It has to become part of your lifestyle. So um, for me, my models of self care have kind of been my mom. And I think this year everyone was aware. People like Serena Williams, people like Simone Biles, people like Naomi Osaka, they just said enough. And I think that self care starts with finally just stopping whatever self-destructive or draining activity that you're doing, and just saying enough. And so that was kind of what self-care was for me, was just learning to say no to certain things. So like I said, one of the first things I did was say no to this job that was very toxic to my mental health. I think self-care is also about sometimes reevaluating your relationships with people and your friendships, and kind of understanding whether those relationships and friendships are conducive to your well-being. So self-care for me this year has meant quitting my job, has meant dropping some friends, has meant me setting boundaries with my existing friends, and just saying, this is what I can do and what I can't do. This is what I will accept and what I won't accept, and also giving them the grace and time to evolve to these new boundaries, because I think the version of myself that some people have known maybe for the last 10 years is not who I am today, and it's been a bit of an adjustment for them. Self-care has been setting aside time to do things that are good for me. So, for example, this week I started back on running. I love running. It's always been something I've enjoyed doing, but obviously when I was in a good place mentally, that kind of hit the back burner. So I'm getting back into running and just taking care of myself physically, eating better, taking care of myself. So that's been a huge part of that. Self-care has also meant, again, making choices that are not just about prioritizing money and wealth. Like, it's not like, let me aim for the best job or for the best role, but having to sometimes take a bit of a pay cut so that I can actually have time. So this Monday to Thursday grind is great, but it means that I'm not making money on Fridays anymore. So it's just having to understand that money isn't everything, and prioritizing other things like well-being. So Self-care, I think, means a lot of different things to different people, but based on those, the women that I mentioned earlier, I think, especially my mom, she inspired me to just start by saying no to people, and then from there, just doing whatever you find actually helps you, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Um, be the best version of yourself.
You mentioned a few women that you kind of look up to. Why then?
Um, I think most of my heroes, what they all have in common, is the fact that they're the strong women type. Because that's kind of always been my role with my friends, my family. I don't know why, I don't know how I got this reputation, but I've always kind of just expected to always be okay, regardless of what I've been going through in my personal life. So the reason why people like Nina Simone and Mary J. Blige and Serena Williams and my mom really inspire me is because they are strong women who have decided that they need to be honest about their vulnerability. And it's something that a lot of people kind of didn't support at first, because I think a lot of people benefit from, women like my mom, women like myself, always being okay, always being put together, because we're the people that people lean on. My mom is my huge hero when it comes to this whole discussion of self-care, because she had a stroke in 2018, and she it's funny. I spent Christmas and New Year's with her a few months after this whole stroke happened, and my parents have this tradition where every year on New Year's Eve, they stay together, they pray, and they talk about one thing that they're thankful that the year before taught them. So it got to my mom's turn, and she said, much to our shock, that she said the best thing that happened to her in 2018 was having a stroke. And we all kind of looked at her a bit like, And she said, because it really made me finally stop, like just stop. I'd been hustling, grinding, you know, to the point of it was at my own detriment. And she said, this stroke made me realize that, listen, you're not superhuman. You're going to have to just stop at some point. And it was, to be honest, since then, I've really seen my mom say no to a lot of things. And it's been for her benefit. She's happier, she's healthier. And yeah, so I think growing up in a family where I have so many, my grandmother, my aunties, my mom, they're all just a strong woman type. I always look to them as an example, and maybe that's why I kind of also became the strong woman. But seeing them being vulnerable has taught me also to be vulnerable and to just say no. And the people who love you will be okay with it, but the people who benefit obviously from you running yourself to the point of burnout will obviously kind of have a kickback about it. And we saw it in the news with Simone Biles and Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka, where people actually made them feel bad for saying, like, listen, I don't have the mental well-being to be able to do what you're asking me to do. So I really am inspired by those women and women like Nina Simone, people like Mary J. Blige, because they are strong, but their strength, I think, comes in not always having it together, but being honest and open about their vulnerabilities, because that's something I'm trying to be better at. So it's not a pretty thing to see someone that you think has it together actually come to you and say, actually, I don't. And it's sad that not everyone will allow you that vulnerability. Like, I've had unfortunate conversations with friends and even family where I've tried to share something bad and they say, oh, you're easy, you're going to get through this. And as seemingly innocent as that comment sounds, what you do by saying that to someone who's come to you to say, listen, I'm struggling, either mentally or physically, is that you're telling them to skip past the stages of healing and just be healed. And, it's very sad that some people have not allowed me to be vulnerable, to be a mess, to be broken, to not be all together all the time. But like I said, this month and a half of me just quitting, stopping, and being like, I'm done, the real ones really came through and said, we love you and accept you in all forms. And if this is where you are right now, this broken version of yourself, we love you and support you for that. So yeah, the reason why those women are my hero is because they gave me the strength and the ability to know that that's okay. It's okay to not be okay. So that's kind of been my mantra for 2021 and 2020, the last year, is that it's okay to not be okay, and that's fine. That's just life. Y'all are just gonna have to figure it out. Yeah.
But that's crazy, the fact that your mom had to get to that point to realize that no is good. It's good to say no. You know what I'm saying? Because that's my.
Yeah. Yeah, and mind you, she'd had a heart attack before that. She's had open heart surgery. I've literally watched my mom, like growing up, my mom doesn't get sick often, but when she does, it usually involves like surgery or some kind of extreme procedure. And I'm not even kidding you. Like I've seen her have surgery, and like my dad will like hire someone to come help because he's busy with work and stuff, and he's like, need to help take care of my wife and help, with the kids. And my mom will literally get up the next day, stitches, cast, whatever, and be up cooking and taking care of it. She just never knew how to stop because she always felt like she had to be the person to take care of all of us. No matter how many times we pled with her mom, like just relax, relax, she just couldn't do it. So yeah, 2018, she finally said, you know what? You people are right, and stop. And she did that. So, and some people weren't happy with it, but my mom said, to heck with you, I don't care. And it was for the benefit of herself and also our family because seeing my mom happy and healthy just means everything as her kids. So yeah, it's even if some people don't like it, you got to do what's best for you.